Then you yell at me for breaking the clipboard. There's no question one of my frustrations when I was up in the CFL is that I had better coaching in high school by far.
Rod Stone has a unique perspective of Mike Pettine. He was a fellow faculty member and coach here at West, coaching the wrestling team from '74 to '92, served as the athletic director from '85 to '92, and then ultimately as the principal of CB West through the end of Mike's career. I'm sure he has some great stories to tell, and well, a few more that he can't. Central Bucks West Hall of Famer, Rod Stone.
Thank you very much, Principal Donovan. Brian Buckley, from the whole crowd, thank you. Tim, thank you for mentioning my coaching career in wrestling. Dick Beck was one of my wrestlers, and I'd like to ask Jim Benstead if you would please take him out of my will to speak at any memorial that might be. I'm not sure I could survive that. It is a pleasure for me to be here today and an honor. My sincere condolences to the entire Pettine family. I've crossed out many of the parts of my speech because you've heard them from other folks or you've heard them actually on the video from Coach Pettine. But I will say that I was truly blessed to have had the opportunity to see some of the behind the scenes of how Coach Pettine influenced the lives of hundreds of young people and engaged a larger community of fans and supporters. Hopefully I can accurately and briefly describe the opportunity I had, as Tim described, as a colleague of Mike Pettine. To prepare, I thought back about questions that I was asked about Mike Pettine, because folks are always interested in people whose success far exceeds the norm, and that question is, how do they do it? These questions increased when the profile of the program expanded outside of our local area following the Easton game at Lehigh and grew exponentially with appearances in many state finals and national coverage in USA Today. With my involvement in District 1 and PIAA, I was often asked questions that all had the same theme. How does he do it? And the best one of all, what was he really like? And Dick has taken care of a lot of it. I'm going to take the serious side. Everyone has heard that urban legends about long practices, loud encouragement from the sidelines, and as Michael Smirkanich mentioned, there is no secret sauce. From my perspective, the success of Coach Mike Pettine was he was a capital T teacher and a capital C coach. He was a master of the details, as you've heard from every previous speaker, and he spent every moment doing his best work. Many people heard this answer and were disappointed, as you may be, but I think when we look more deeply at the words teacher and coach, folks understand. In most cases, all of our teachers know their subject material and coaches know their game. Obviously, Mike Pettine was very knowledgeable about the game that he loved. But the challenge is what follows after that. Can all teachers and coaches communicate their knowledge to others? Mike Pettine was able to clearly explain a detailed game plan to his coaches and players. However, he had the additional components that set him apart from others. He was able to diagnose quickly and make appropriate changes with precision during practices and games. Michael Jr. mentioned it clearly in the intel yesterday. If the lineman splits are 18 inches, don't line up at 17 or 19. And that was one of the stories that I actually told folks who asked me. Probably it was one of the most often told stories. I was walking out to practice one day. We had a visiting major college coach, and we were not quite across the street, and we heard Coach Pettine blow his whistle and gently remind the players that the splits for that play were 12 inches, and some of them were lined up at 9 inches. And the college coach looked at me and he said, "Really?" I said, "Really, that's what happens." Now, that answer was lost on some folks when I told them the story, but others really took time to understand it. Coach Pettine also had legendary vision. The players talked about how he had eyes in the back of his head, and he was able to watch the offside of a play and would offer gentle correction to the offending player, and sometimes he would even offer that to an assistant coach about what they had done in their group practice. Another common question was about the length of practice in films. They were long, but he always had a laser focus on learning, executing the game plan, and correcting mistakes. He was a master of determining the tendency of the other teams and shutting down their star player. In conjunction with this, he was also an expert at putting the right player in the right spot at the right time. Now, often that required some other player unceremoniously losing their position for a brief period of time. But Coach Pettine also effectively utilized his assistant coaches, not something that every coach does, and particularly special acknowledgement to his longtime coach, Mike Carey. Some of you may have been expecting a more grandiose explanation from me. However, I will say that as a principal who supervised teachers, the discussion always was, we know you taught the content, but what evidence was there that students learned it? Mike Pettine taught it. The players applied what they learned, winning 326 games, along with many, many significant lessons that would propel them to success in life. Folks, the results of Mike Pettine's work should not be a surprise to anyone. He walked the walk he asked his coaches and players to do. The tremendous outpouring of support today and the last 5 weeks is well deserved. It was a life well lived. Coach Pettine will always appreciate your dedication to family, your players, and to the community. Thank you.
You know, I've been in situations where, you know, everybody's saying a great play and good hustle, and what they're doing is they're calling mediocrity great. And, you know, when I give a kid a compliment, I want it to be something special. And when a teammate says, hey, great effort, hopefully it is great effort.
We ready, guys?
Yeah!
1, 2, 3. Hey, that was one of the old-time highlights there, baby.
Someone else with a unique perspective of Coach Pettine is Kevin Benstead. A West graduate in 1997, they have been friends for years. Once retirement hit, the focus turned to family and the golf course, and that friendship intensified. Kevin has had a front row seat to see the mighty coach being humbled by a little white ball. Central Bucks West class of 1977, Kevin Benstead.
Well, I enjoyed that 1997 a little better when you corrected it with the 77, but thank you. Good afternoon, and I want to thank the Pettines for giving me this opportunity. Quite an honor to say a few words about someone who was a teacher, friend, and during retirement we became real close and got to play a lot of golf together, and it was just a special, special man in my life. A lot of the things have been covered already. Mike Jr., being as thorough as his father, had said, guys, have 8 or 10 pages because probably 4 or 5 will be taken by the other guys, and I'm down to about a page. But luckily I have a lot of golf stories, but a few that'll be okay for this audience. My first introduction to CB West football was in 1971, back when you were a junior high guy, you hopped the fence to get to the field and save those couple dollars, but to go watch that machine play. And I used to watch Jeff Stemple and Pat Carey and Dusty Bryan and Max Guyton, and that was my first real introduction to just perfection. And I always wanted to see what made that man tick. When I got to West, when you were picking your classes, they asked you, you know, they really had you on a college-bound courses, and I said, as a 10th grader, I said, well, listen, I really want to take African studies. And he said, I said, I knew Mike Pettine was the only one who taught that. So I got in that class. I got to know Mike real well. And again, it was a love affair from then on. But what about Mike that I really want to say, and Corey hit on that about everybody was family. When I look around here, it's his family. The whole community came together in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And I traveled a lot, and you wanted to say you were from Doylestown, and you wanted to get into that CB West football, and it was just a very proud time. And I think he, listen, Doylestown has a lot to offer, but he certainly put it on the map in my eyes in a lot of ways, in a lot of positive ways. Playing with Mike, when he retired down to Florida, and I lived about 20 minutes from down there, we'd play a couple days a week together, and so I'd get 8 or 10 hours with him in a cart, which I said to some of the other guys in our golf group, I said, you don't have to put me with Coach all the time. I said, I can ride with some other guys. He says, hey, you manage them better than others. And I said, all right, I will do that. But Mike, I would always pick his brain about different things and try to find out what some of the different players were doing and what people were up to. And he used to say, I said, well, you just created such a, a lot of these guys go on as a successful business, but more importantly, family and stuff. And I used to say, I said, well, was there any secret sauce? And he says, listen, Kev, he goes, I just wanted to create leaders. He said, but, leaders that could, carry on. And I said to him, I found a quote, and it just says, a good leader has followers. A great leader creates more leaders. And that's what it reminded me, because he used to say, I created leaders, not just followers. I mean, you did it one way with him, but he created more leaders. And when I look around and I see all these gentlemen, they really were leaders. But again, with the golf, that was our thing. And Mike and I talked a lot about family. When he first moved down there, I had a son that was playing competitive golf, and at a pretty high level. And Mike would always ask me every day, how's Junior doing? How's Junior doing? I said, oh, he's good. But I said, one day, I said, you know what? I said, he could probably use a little jolt of confidence. I said, maybe his confidence is off. And he goes, maybe I have something for him. And I thought, well, boy, is this going to be a swing lesson, or is this going to, I was a little hesitant what he was going to offer. He, the next time I saw him, which was about 2 days later, he showed up. Now, mind you, he was the golf coach, as you saw on that day. He showed up, and he had 3 boxes. And I looked at these things, and he said, yeah, I brought some articles for you. And these were Golf Digests from 1960s through the 80s. And I said, what is with all this? And he said, well, I was a golf coach. I had to stay up on it. And anyway, when I started paging, just looking through them, and I saw Nicholas and Palmer and on these covers, I said, well, these are almost collectibles. I said, I'll read them. I'll share them with my son. I'll get them back to you. He looked at me and says, oh, no, Kev. He says, Joyce was never so happy to see those boxes go out of the house. And I said, okay, so we'll move on that. But Mike really was. It was all about family, and I met some of his grandchildren when they were toddlers and stuff, but I learned more, I knew way more than I probably should have known about his grandkids, because he loved them to death, and he bragged about them. And, I wanted to pass on some of the things that he probably didn't say to you. I remember Dick Beck saying, and that Mike handed out compliments like manhole covers, and so maybe you didn't get to say it to you, but I will. So, first, with Linda and Bob, Linda, he certainly said you had a heart of gold, and he really enjoyed doing the projects at your house. And your son, Steven, I know he said he was aces on the computer, and I still couldn't get Mike to text me, but, he at least was aces on, you at least helped him. And I know you're at University of Pennsylvania now with a job, and he was very proud of that. Nathan is going on to become an EMT and a volunteer fireman. He talked a lot about that. He was very, very proud of you guys. Sandy and Ori. Sandy, he used to tell me you could run any business. And he was afraid of you in a little way. So there were some certain things that you pushed some of the buttons that made him afraid. But anyway, your son Andrew got into golf, and I know he was really looking forward to the golf season coming up, and he was very, very proud of you. Then Michael Jr.'s Ryan. So just a couple weeks ago, Mike was up in Pennsylvania to accept an award, and he called me. When he called me, if it was 10 or 11 o'clock at night, something was up, and I said, what's up? And he says, I'm driving. I said, all right? Mike was notorious for just driving through the night. So I said, all right, and we talked about an hour. And I said, well, have I talked to you in the Carolina yet, or have you gotten out of Virginia? What's going on? He says, yeah, I'm going down to see Ryan at High Point. I want to see his campus and visit him. He goes, we're going to have lunch. It'll be a real nice time. I ended up talking to Mike a couple days later, and I said, how was it? And he couldn't stop talking about how beautiful the campus was. And he said to me, I said, well, how was lunch? Did you have a good lunch and everything? He says, oh, no. He goes, I drove through the night. He goes, I got there for breakfast. So I can imagine as a freshman in college, you were thrilled to have your grandfather showing up at 9 o'clock in the morning, but that was Mike. Ryan, I know he also was saying how you were now committed to going into law enforcement and how proud that made him because you were following his great uncle Carmen's footsteps, who was the chief of police and other things. And I won't mention Carmen without Eileen, Mike's sister, who wore out the rosaries. She used to sit there with the transistor radio on, listening to the games with that rosary in hand. And when it got too close, she would turn off the radio, but she wore out those rosaries. And he's grateful for that. To the girls, I probably would know way more about your lacrosse statistics than I should. But Mike would always tell me he was so proud. And I know, Megan, you went on up to Stony Brook on a scholarship and now to Ohio State, and he talked at length about you. Of course, you got a lot of fame when your father took the job. I know I saw that quote, but that's social media for you. Katie, he has you ticketed Division I. And he told me, he said, because this is the one she's going to be. Go anywhere she wants with lacrosse, can play any sport. Now, he did say, he said, I got to keep her away from the boys. So I'm going to pass that on. Poppy says you stay away from the boys. So, no, but he couldn't have been more proud. And Christine, I know it's one of Linda's daughters. Linda and Bob, he was very proud that you followed your heart and you're out in Chicago within arts and theater. And so congratulations on that. Michael, I'm not even going to begin to say you know how proud he was of you. And he took your setbacks harder than his own. And that's about all I can say. And those are the days I didn't get. If you had a tough weekend, I kind of stayed away on Monday for golf. There was certain things that we didn't want to do that. And Joyce, you were as they were, I think, sweethearts in 7th or 8th grade. Him, the star athlete, and her, the head cheerleader. And he wouldn't have been the man without you behind him. So. Was the thing. Lastly, I don't want to leave out Bella. Bella was the latest addition. Bella was Mike's dog, and the story was he was getting this dog for Joyce. He said, "Hey, I'm on the golf course so much, I got to give her something, so I'll get this dog." So he got the dog, and the first week I asked him the one day, I said, "Well, how's things going with Bella?" He goes, "I don't get any sleep. Thing keeps me up all night." And so I thought, that's normal. But it was about a year later that I found out firsthand that the reason it kept him up all night is because he had taken his pillow, his blanket, had gone out to the living room, laid down next to Bella and talked to this dog all night to reassure it that it was. But that was the soft side of him. And if he was here right now, I'm sure I'd be in trouble telling that story. But that was the soft side of him that a lot of people didn't get to see. Our thing was golf, and we played a lot of it, and as others have said, he was very, very competitive. I know after watching a lot of those films, I think I'm glad I didn't play football because I don't know if I would have survived all the, with the golf, I think I was maybe the last guy to play with him. That was the thing. But he did like his golf, and I know last night when I was talking to Dick Beck, we laughed about Mike didn't sleep well at night, and he would order any club that he saw on those infomercials late at night. He would order that club, and he thought this is the one that's going to get me. His putting was his kryptonite. So down in Florida, I took him to this master putter fixer, and guy had worked with Annika Sorenstam, all the top pros. I said, Mike, this is a gift. I want to get you sized up, get you a nice golf club. He said, all right. He goes, he's a little hesitant, but he did it, and he went through all the computer things. He found his putter. He goes, I can't miss with this thing. It's perfect. And about 3 weeks later on the course, and I look, I'm taking notice, and I see this putter, and he has a piece of foam around it and duct tape all around it, because now, years later, I told him, I said, Mike, you were ahead of the game. I said, now that's $1 million industry. They're trying to get with fat putters to get your hands out of it. So he was a very forward thinker, and he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Mike, on the golf course, was always a treat. If you think he barked at those players, you should have heard him bark at the ball. And, every golfer talks to their shot, get a little left, do this, do that, sit down. He commanded it. And I swear, I waited for the ball. I thought this ball's going to listen at some point because he does it. But he was a very talented golfer. He had 3 hole-in-ones, and he could play the game. He could definitely play the game, and he loved the game. He wore me. He'd want to play 5-6 days a week. I said, Mike, I'm good for 2 or 3. I said, I got to take some and work a little bit. But anyway, he loved this golf. I'll finish up with one story because I heard how his voice. It was iconic, and on the golf course sometimes that didn't really play well. But when we first moved to in Florida, we would travel around different courses until we found a couple we liked. We were both relatively new to Florida, and it was one of the things, if we found one we liked, we'd put it in a rotation, we'd play it over and over. It's not much different than his offensive philosophy, I feel. But anyway, there was one particular course that was called Hernando Oaks, and there was a hole. It was a par 5, very demanding tee shot with water on the left and homes to the right. And we had played there probably 4 or 5 consecutive Tuesdays. And this hole was his white whale. It just seemed to get the best of him. And, of course, he was commanding that ball and it didn't do what he wanted. And everybody else hit their tee shot and we're getting ready to go to the cart. And out walks from one of the houses this petite elderly woman. And she says, that's enough. I've heard enough colorful language the last 4 weeks. And on she's saying, I know it's you guys. I recognize the voice. I know it's you guys. I felt bad for Mike, so I said, hundreds of people play here. I said, it could have been anybody. And I said, this is the first and last time you'll definitely hear from us. That wasn't good enough. She came right over to the cart, and again, very petite lady, and she put right at Coach, and she said, that voice, I'll never forget that voice. That voice, I'll never forget that voice. Coach, none of us will. Thank you.
Come on. I thought you were fast. Come on, beat me.
It's like a tranquilizer.
Yeah.
To come away for all these guys, give me these headaches here. I got this little kid. He doesn't make any mistakes. He doesn't talk back. He's very coachable. Yeah.
That little kid in the hallway has certainly grown up. Ryan Pettine graduated from Gerstle Academy in Finksburg, Maryland last year and is currently a freshman at High Point University in North Carolina, majoring in criminal justice. We know him as Coach. He knows him as Poppy. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ryan Pettine.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Ryan Pettine. I'm very proud of the Michael. My dad shares the name, and so did my Poppy. I'm Mike's grandson. I called him Poppy, so just bear with me on that because it's weird calling him Mike. First and foremost, I think it's important that I thank everybody for being here today to celebrate his life, one filled with mentorship, the drive to succeed, and unparalleled commitment to his family and teams. I hope you all had the opportunity to look through the memorabilia out in the gym. Most of that came from Poppy's basement where he kept everything, I mean everything, since like the 60s. I didn't realize how far back, you walk in there and it loops around and then there's a crawl space and you got to flip on different lights. It's crazy. And as we're sifting through it, I'm getting a history lesson. And it's not the things that I'm reading, like the newspapers from the 1950s. It's more so how on earth to work a VCR or a tape recorder. I have no clue. And I'm in college right now, and I mean, trying to figure those things out is probably one of the hardest things I've done in the past year. I mean, in all seriousness, in the 19 years of my life, I've never met someone who is more in love with the game of football. And I think we can all agree on that. Than my puppy, excuse me. His love for the game was not only something that he loved doing, but it was also something that he enjoyed making me do. One of my fondest and probably the funniest memories with Poppy was a few years back. I was probably 12 years old. I'd always go to their Doylestown house, and with that, of course, came a football lesson in the backyard. On this day in particular, I woke up and walked downstairs. I noticed some of the furniture was missing. So I'm looking at the lanai, and some of the lounge chairs are missing, and I peek in the garage because I'm looking for my Poppy. Most of the stuff in there is cleared out. And then I kind of I'm sitting by the table, and I look out in the backyard, and all of the furniture is in the backyard. And I'm thinking to myself, what's going on? This man is making an obstacle course in the backyard to, quote, test my agility. So it didn't take very long. I booked it back upstairs and pretended to be asleep. I was not about to do that. But I mean, Poppy, he had a sixth sense about him, and not even a minute later, he comes barging through that door and he gets me out of bed. He cooked me breakfast. We sat down at the table together. He wrote up the game plan for that day. I'm serious, drill by drill, what I was gonna do. I'm not kidding about that. He grabbed his clipboard, he grabbed his whistle, and out to practice we went. Out in the backyard we went. The drill went fine, per usual. I could really tell that he missed coaching. I didn't hate it. I was his new star player. So, just the thing is, I never realized how much I appreciated those lessons until now, I'm older. To be honest, I really wasn't a fan at the time. But they showed me how much he cared for me and how much he wanted me to succeed. And that's something that he shared across the board with his family, his teams, and most importantly with himself. On the morning of February 12th, 2017, a Sunday morning, Poppy came and visited me down at High Point University in North Carolina, where I'm a freshman. I had just joined my fraternity, Beta Theta Pi, days earlier, and of course I was excited to see him. I did get the call 4 days earlier that he was going to come down, and he's like, let's get lunch, whatever. I got a phone call at 8 a.m., on a Sunday. I wasn't really ready to get up. He's like, hey, I'm about an hour out. Let's go to breakfast instead. Because he was cruising through. He was on his way down to Florida. And so, he got there, and actually, I don't actually have this written, but he had me on speakerphone, which I didn't even know he knew how to turn on his phone. And he was at the gatehouse at High Point, and I could hear him talking to the guard. And he's like, yeah, I hear this place is like Disney, and talking it up and everything, and I can tell the guard is so uncomfortable just being targeted. He's like, yes, sir, you can proceed. And Poppy's like, well, I heard it's a wonderful school, my grandson really loves it and all that. He's like, yes, sir, it's a great place. We're happy to have you. So anyways, he gets through campus, and he comes and picks me up. He was a cheap date. I took him to IHOP. We talked politics, and when I say we talk politics, I really mean that we argue back and forth across the table about it. We talked about my fraternity, how school was going, and I do recall that he yelled at me when I reached for the pink Sweet and Low to put in my coffee, asking me, again, quote, if I knew what that stuff was made of. Unfortunately, I did not know that would be the last time that I saw him. We departed with a firm handshake as always. He slipped me a couple $5 bills as if it was a secret. Actually, before that, he was coming back from when he got his award in Harrisburg, I believe it was. And he goes, hold on a second, as I'm getting out of the car. And he reaches back behind the seat, and he grabs, he's like, check out this new paperweight. That's what he called it. No, but yeah, he slipped me some fives. He said he loved me, and he went on his way. Now, I mention my fraternity, Beta Theta Pi, so fondly for a reason. When Poppy passed, those guys were my rock. It was, much like the cohesion of like a football team, it's a brotherhood. And, they helped me through those tough times when I was away from my family, because it was in the middle of midterm week. I came to realize how similar the lessons I learned from Poppy were to the core values of the fraternity. We have mutual assistance, intellectual growth, integrity, trust, and responsible conduct. Now, I've never been a very religious person, but I do have this overwhelming feeling that God continues to want these values in my life. With Poppy in heaven now, and I can hear him sipping on his Turkey Hill decaf iced tea, the Lord has given me this association to be a part of, one that he knows my Poppy would approve of 100%. And although I never played football myself, I didn't want to continue in the family business, my Poppy loved me for who I was, how I carried myself, and how I treated others. Now, with this said, I also think it's important to mention that while football was a defining part in my Poppy's life, it for sure was not everything. Some had the blessed opportunity to call him coach. Others called him friend, colleague, or teacher. I'd like to say that I had the greatest honor of all in calling him my Poppy. He leaves a legacy of helping others. He leaves a legacy of helping others achieve more than they ever could have imagined. And for that, he is my hero and my inspiration. When I look at Mike Pettine Sr., I see the man that I want to be someday. Thank you.
I probably would be out just playing golf and doing other things other than football coaching if it weren't for him. I mean, I think we make a pretty good team.
Two guys besides my father influenced me the most ever in my life, and it was Mike Pettine and Johnny Majors at University of Pittsburgh.
First down, third and 2.5. Look out for Morris. It's shot down. Huge play by White. Stands at his 30-yard line. And booms another one. A lot of air on that football. It'll be hit with the 23-yard line. They're on the sideline. 10. No leader on the field. It's a touchdown for Central Bucks West.
That might be the first punt return against Beck all year.
What were you screaming shit in for? What were you screaming in?
I was saying run the clock, that's all.
We got it, man. We got it. Can't score down. Oh, man, it's this Christmas.
Hey, what down's this?
To say that this next speaker and Mike Pettine were close would be a vast understatement. Mike Carey played for the Bucks starting in 1968, serving as captain in 1970, his senior year. Mike would go on to star as an offensive lineman at the University of Pittsburgh. He returned to Pettine's side in 1977 and began a coaching career that has spanned 30 years. 24 of those at CB West, being the head coach of the 2000 campaign. 1 year at North Penn and 5 at Archbishop Wood. In total, he's been part of 24 league titles, 11 state championship appearances, winning 8 of those, 4 out of 6 at West, 1 for 1 at North Penn, and 3 for 4 at Wood. As we all know, Coach Carey and Coach Pettine formed the most lethal combination of bad cop, worst cop. Fueled by a passion for football and the development of young men, these two formed an unbreakable bond. Central Bucks West Hall of Famer, class of 1971, Mike Carey.
Thanks, Tim, for the nice words. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, just like the other speakers have done. It sure has been a tough month. I also want to thank all the former CB West players and fans that have reached out to me. I truly appreciate it. It's really been therapy for myself, and I'm sure the Pettines also. My relationship with Mike was different than most, as I played 3 years for him, and then I came back and coached 24 years with him until he retired in 1999. When I took over as head coach in 2000, Mike played a key consulting role in our getting back to the state title. We met every Monday morning at 10 o'clock in the office, and his game plan was spot on with what I was going to do in the next week. I started doing some statistics, and Mike was a head coach for 372 games at Central Bucks and Central Bucks West. And I was involved in 300 of them as a player and a coach. As Tim said, to say I knew Mike well was an understatement. Not many people know this, but Mike rescued me back in 1977. When I was injured, my playing days were over, and I was floundering, attending classes back at the University of Pittsburgh. Mike called me and asked if I would like to come back to Central Bucks West and teach and coach. I told him I had to think about it. It took a couple of weeks. I called him up, and I said yes, but all the while just thinking that would be a 1 or 2 year commitment. What was going to be a short-term fill-in job became a passion of mine, and the opportunity to work side by side with somebody who became my mentor and then one of my best friends. Over the years, I grew through the coaching ranks and earned Mike's trust by getting results with the position groups I coached. It was tough. Pettine critiqued everything I did. And so many times I thought he was yelling at me way more than the players. As all the coaches that are in this room, and there's a lot of them, his coaching tree extended deep into the community, will attest to, Pettine constantly coached the coaches. At times he made my Irish boil over. And as most of my former players out here will tell you, we had legendary arguments on the field. But we never lost sight of our common goal, and that was to get better and to win Friday night. We sure were passionate. After 13 years with Mike as an assistant, in 1990 he made me the defensive coordinator and then the assistant head coach the following year, and together we formed a coaching chemistry that would be hard-pressed to duplicate in today's world, where few coaches stay in one spot for any long duration, or the second in command doesn't leave for a head job. It truly became Pettine and Carey as one, and Mike wanted it that way. He included me in all decisions, and I was so proud to stand side by side with somebody I admired so much. That chemistry was built on hours and hours of work where we divided the load up and bounced ideas off each other daily. The hours we spent together grew and grew, and like was said here prior, Mike retired in 1996, and we both became extremely excited because we actually knew then that we could put more hours into football. We met every day around 9 o'clock in the coaching office. Went to practice, came out, went into the weight room, and then we reviewed the day's practice afterwards on the dry erase board or on film and left around 9 o'clock. Sundays included. We met at 8 o'clock, and by the time his meeting was done at Joyce's and Mike's house, that was usually around 9 o'clock. As our wife surely knew, it was a full-time job and an advantage over every other high school staff in the state of Pennsylvania. And the results surely speak well for themselves. As when Mike ended, and I include my year because he was as involved in that as he was in the prior 3 years of the late 90s, we had 4 straight state title appearances and 59 straight wins. You know, as was said here also before, and I'm going to say it again, people ask me all the time, what made Pettine so great? You know, my answer was also, it was a multitude of things. And if you made a list, it went on and on. But there were some things that came to the forefront. His field and film vision were just second to none. You know, he was like a great military commander who could take advantage of any situation, but he also always saw the areas that needed to be shored up. As was alluded to tonight, I can remember like it was yesterday, we were playing Ben Salem, we gashed him off tackle for 15 yards. The tackle on the tight end made a great block. The running back went through, made the linebacker miss, and there's Mike all upset, yelling at the backside end because he didn't get down with the right angle to block the safety, or in his words, that could have been a touchdown. Next is attention to detail and demanding perfection. It wasn't just words. All 11 doing it the Pettine way, with maximum effort every play. His phrase, which is a classic, the CB West measuring stick, it was all about that and not the scoreboard. As all the former players here will attest to also, Monday Night Films in room 59, how can you ever forget that? You walked out of those films, whether you won 35-7, 40-0, and I'd hear the players shaking their head. Didn't we just win that game? Because it wasn't the score. It was all about attaining perfection. And that CB West measuring stick was the ideal. Next, pushing players' buttons. You know, I don't know about the good cop, worst cop. I probably was the worst cop. But Mike knew how to push the right buttons on every player to make them play better than they ever imagined. He wanted to squeeze out every last drop of talent you had. And this was very important. He was never happy if you weren't improving, as all the players will attest to. I don't care if you were great, good, average. Every day he wanted to see improvement, and that rubbed off on us coaches also. Next, Mike felt very strongly the only way to get better was multiple reps of the drill, the play, and the scheme. So practices, as also was alluded to, were legendary here at CB West. We would hit three hours and we'd still have 4 more periods to go. And it never was the time. We would, in the fall, when the daylight savings hit, we'd be under the lights practicing, but our practices averaged 3.5 hours. And that's where our success was built. That's where our craft was worked on. Mondays we were in full gear and did drill work. Tuesdays and Wednesdays we had 3.5, 4-hour practices with live thud scrimmages. Thursday, the day before the game, we'd have, and these guys know, Coach Beck and Michael and all these other guys, Thursday, the day before the game, 24 hours before the game, we'd have a 20-minute offense and a 20-minute defensive scrimmage live in the line. Many times I said to him, Mike, we're getting this guy nicked, we got that guy nicked. And he'd say, I don't care. You know, it's about getting the reps in, being more prepared. He felt he wanted to make the practices so hard that the games would be easy, whether it was pressure-wise, intensity-wise, or stamina-wise. He did use this analogy with me many times. It's like a fighter. He'd say, in a boxing championship, you just can't hit the heavy bag. You got to spar and spar a lot. The last thing that I thought, and he did it so well, and it was brought up by Rod Stone, is slotting players to the right position. Mike had such a gift to look at a player, his size, his speed, athleticism, skill, toughness, and slot him to what position he would best help Central Bucks West win. Not the position he wanted to play. There may be nothing more important at the high school level than in getting your best 11 on the field at the same time. No reason to have your second team fullback sitting when he could be your starting tight end or your starting guard. Or you have two good running backs and an average quarterback. And you move the great running back to quarterback, a la Putty Gilbert, Randy Cuthbert. And you'd have another weapon running the football. Now on the lighter side, Pettine also was famous, as you saw so much on the films, for his sayings to players. And I want to emphasize, these were never said in jest. There was never a joke about it. Nobody was laughing. I mean, there was a couple times you'd see guys in the back trying to keep from laughing. But if he grabbed you and called you the sacrificial lamb, he was 2 inches from your face, his vocals were blasting you, and his spit was flying all over your face. Another one that he loved was, especially with my linemen, because Pettine was a back, and there was this competitive thing between me and him. I was a lineman, and I'd coach in the line. He'd grab one of my linemen and say, "Wilson, you look like a poodle fighting a shepherd." Everybody would just pause, and then, you would wonder, is he joking? But he was never joking. The next one that I thought was great, that came right to my mind, because I can still hear him in '97 saying it, he'd say, "Armstrong, you look like a pregnant sea cow." Now, what the heck what is a sea cow, first of all, and what is a pregnant one? I've never seen either. The final one I always thought was funny, because Mike would come out of the clear blue and come up with a saying, and I know he never thought of these, they just came out of his brain, but we were, weightlifting and strength training here was so important, and in the late 90s, our roster swelled to close to 100 kids. So we would have second, especially third and fourth team guys, a lot of them, that were 6'2", 240, 6'2", 220, looking great. And, they were way down the depth chart. And on Friday night, we'd come out of that locker room and do the legendary walk out onto the football field in double file, as Pettine would be screaming, "Captains up front, everybody else double file," and all the guys in the back, all buffed up, walking with their chest out, their sleeves all rolled up. And Pettine and me would walk out following, and we'd be up next to the end of the line. He'd look over at a guy who was just jacked in fourth team, and he'd say, "You look like Tarzan, but you play like Jane." And the guy would go, immediately, there'd be no more jacked up, and Pettine would look at me and give me that little smirk of his. Another one of Mike's famous traits that drove me crazy was he loved, if you're a CBUS fan here, which there's a lot of them, he loved to run the quarterback over to the sideline and get the play. And our drives were 12 to 15 plays long, and you could just see the quarterback as he was coming. About the second quarter, he's getting slower and slower. Then he's in the huddle on his hands on his knees. So Mike got to a point where he yelled the play out to the huddle, or the quarterback ran to the hash mark, would stop, and he'd yell the play. I was always on him about this. I said, "Coach, the defense is listening. They know the play." And Pettine would say, "I don't give a damn if they know the play. They can't stop it." 99% of the time, it didn't matter, but there was one time it did. Late 80s, early 90s, the Chamonix up here playing CB West early in the season at War Memorial, and we have the ball at the 50-yard line on the hash closest to us. We have a young quarterback, Greg Moylan, he was a sophomore at the helm, and Pettine yells out to Moylan, "Slot right strong, spring right, screen left." I look over, and I realize the ball's on the hash mark, 17 and a half yards away. Pettine's 5 yards out on the field. I'm right behind him, the defense is 13 yards away from him. And the Chamonix right defensive end, literally, his name was Mike Fredericks. I think he played, Michael, at University of Virginia, and then definitely played in the NFL. He's 12, 13 yards away. He's staring right at Pettine as he yells a screen pass, and he's got a smirk from ear to ear. I say to Pettine, Mike, he heard the play. He heard the play. Run it. Moylan takes the ball. He rolls right, stops, throws the screen pass back. Here's our running back, literally about 3 yards away from us. I look over, there's Fredericks. He's just waiting and laying. Fredericks makes a break on the ball, intercepts it, runs it 45 yards for a touchdown. I'm going nuts on the sidelines. I throw the clipboard down. I think I break it in half. Pettine looks at me in his low voice and says, "So it's 1 out of 100 that doesn't work." You could not print my response. So, I would like to close with 3 things. The first one is just to mention about all the great teams and all the teams here at Central Bucks and Central Bucks West. 33 years, an amazing record, 23 league titles, 8 state titles, as I believe Dick referred to, 4 on the field, 4 in the polls, which is really slighted. There was at least 4 other times we came in second and in the state when it was just poll only, and those polls came out of Harrisburg and out of Pittsburgh. And Mike never wanted to say what his most talented team was. And there were so many great teams. And when you talk to all those players out here, their team was the best. I mean, we already heard Beck saying 85 is the best. Schobert thinks 67 is. Jeff Stemple, my brother, thinks 71 and 72. Of course, you got 76, 78, 80, 85, 87, 91, 97, 98, 99, and of course, my guys in 2000 think they were the greatest ever. But I honestly want to tell all of you that Mike never wanted to talk about it, not even in private. I tried a few times. Me and him were alone, having a beer, and I'd bait him and say, "Come on, Mike, what if we matched up this team against this team?" Because I always had my ideas, but he always said to me, they were all great. They went through our program, they put up with us, and I love them. And that's the message right there, is how much, if you played for CB West and you were the 90th guy on the roster, he felt for you the same as the number 1 guy. Secondly, I want to let all the former players know that if anyone needs to talk, I'm here. Mike's lessons will be with us forever. And talking definitely helps the soul. The last thing I want to bring up is a story that evolved over, just bear with me here, over the last 15 years. And that story is when Mike retired in '99, I had this harebrained idea that I wanted to throw a tribute banquet for him. So, Mike not being somebody that wants to be in the limelight, so I just approached him 2 years later in 2002 exactly, came up to him and said, "Hey, Mike, I want to thinking about throwing a tribute banquet for you where I'd invite all the teams back. We'd have all the guys. It'd be a great one-night thing." Before I could even get that, I just went, "No," and kind of put my tail between my leg, and he was really, with him, when he said it, it was so affirmative. I waited 8 more years. In 2010, he actually called me up in the afternoon on a Thursday and said, "Hey, some of our former players are in town that are actually sitting here, and we're meeting at the MBI to have a beer." So I met him down there, and we were there for about an hour and a half, and he said to us at the table, we're all sitting in the cocktail room, he says, "Listen, I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'm out of here." So I'm like, damn, this is the night. I'm going to go back and talk to him. So I follow him back to the bathroom. He walks into the bathroom. 10 seconds later, door opens. I can see him looking over his shoulder saying, "What the hell's Carey doing following me into the bathroom?" So I get up right next to him in the urinal, and I'm like, "Hey, Mike, hell of a play." I'm thinking if I surprised him in the bathroom, this would do it. So we're standing there next to each other, and I say, you know, about that tribute banquet, I really think it'd be something great for us. Too soon. Then he changed the subject, walked out. So this year, over the holidays, I was laying in bed, and I said, I'm getting it done. So I called him up after January 1st, and I said to him, Mike, it was a Friday afternoon, and I said, Mike, I don't want you to say a word. I want you to let me speak. And I told him, I said, look, I want to put this tribute banquet on for you, and I'm going to get all the teams together. And it would be a great night. We want to get together because we want to tell you how much we love you and how much you've done for us. And I don't want no for an answer. So he's listening, and I said, and the last thing is, we're not getting any younger. So I want to do this. I said, I'm calling you Sunday afternoon, and I want a yes. So I called him. Again, it's the second week in this January. And he answered the phone. I could tell right away he was really excited. And he said, I'm honored. I was like, yes, I got it done. 15 years. And he says, I'm honored, and it'll be a great night, I know it. But could you think you could do one thing for me? And this is my appeal to everyone here. I said, what is it, Coach? And he said, well, after you raise the funds for the banquet, is there any way you could raise a couple extra bucks? Because my Mike Pettine Scholarship Fund ran out of money last year, and that's so dear to my heart. I said, sure. So I formed a committee with Jim Benstead, who was up here tonight, Brian Buckley, who also was up here, Chris Cleland, and Brian Hensel. And we just had gotten together and met and started putting the things together. And when I talked to him 5 days before he passed on that Saturday, when as Kevin alluded to, he was up in the area, I was so excited because I had just procured the spot and told him, I said, Mike, the date's May 12th, 2018. We're going to have it at the Fuge down in Johnsville, Ivy Lane area, and it's going to be a great night. The place can hold 800 to 1,000 people, and we're going to fill it. And I said, and we're going to raise some good funds for your scholarship fund. So when everybody came in tonight, or if there's somewhere else, you got the program. If you look at the back of the program or the insert that was put in there, please, if you can find it in your heart, to donate $10, $100, or help us with a corporate scholarship. But we want to take this fund. I know it would make Mike so happy to take this scholarship fund and get it to a number that would always take care of a Central Bucks West football player from now to the end of time. So please help us with that, and thank you for your time.
All right, punt block. And you have more wasted effort than I've ever seen. You should be blocking half of these things.
A-gap.
Once again, do you ever look and say 4 yards in front?
You can watch the film. I was 4 yards in front.
This way.
That's my point. If Coach carries there and I'm 4 yards in front, I want to go across 4 yards. You're 4 yards here and then you dive into the guy. If you were doing it right, you wouldn't have roughed the kicker. And get your punt block ready.
Punt block's on.
5-second clock. Carlson back, throws, ball is out, tipped up into the air. 7 to go, and I'll tell you what, Ed Hinkle is going to make the most important punt of his life coming up here. For this is really a moment of truth.
Go after the punt. Block it.
They do this. Blocked it. It's blocked. It's touchdown. Incredible. It's a touchdown for Ed Nebraska, the gold medal for the third consecutive year.
Fucking unbelievable. Without the big guy. TV West, boom! West! You can't do big, baby! You're the greatest! That's a hell of a way to go out! That's a hell of a way to go out! I got $100 won! The Bucks won! That's the greatest victory ever. I don't know. There was some force other than what I understand involved in this game.
The person who has seen Mike Pettine from the most number of perspectives will be his son. Sorry. Junior started for the Bucks in the early 80s and went on to play defensive back at the University of Virginia. He'd be drawn back to football after graduation, embarking on a coaching career that began as an assistant at CB West in 1990. He would eventually become head coach at North Penn High School in 1997 and face his dad's Bucks 3 times in 5 years. And we don't need to remind Junior of those results. The rivalry was detailed in 1999 in 2 documentaries that both aired on ESPN, The Season and The Last Game. Junior would leave North Penn after the 2001 season, but not before hiring Senior as an assistant for 1 year, a move that Junior calls, quote, not even a good idea on paper. Junior began a coaching career in the National Football League that included stints with the Ravens, Jets, Bills, before serving as head coach of the Cleveland Browns for 2 seasons. The person most responsible for this script and putting together today's celebration, Central Bucks West Hall of Famer, class of 1984, Michael Pettine, Jr.
Thanks, Tim, and a special thanks to you. You had the not so easy task of running the show, and you were outstanding. I'd also like to thank the members of the Central Bucks School Board, Superintendent John Kopicki, for their support of today's celebration. Also, a multitude of district personnel under the leadership of Bill Slaughter, Ed Tate, Henry Hunt, Brian Caughey, and Chaz Cathers, who have and are working behind the scenes to make today possible. You know who you are, and we offer, from my family, we offer our sincere thanks. Last, thank you so much to Bev Carey and members of the CB West Hall of Fame Committee for your countless hours of dedication to this ceremony. That you guys helped us hit it. We hit it out of the park in a very tight window. For those of you who don't know, there is an after party at the station Tap House. There'll be which is right down the street by the train station. There'll be an open mic there for anybody who wants to say, raise a glass and toast the old man. And then we will also be accepting donations for the scholarship fund. It was very important to him and would obviously be so much appreciated. We've heard so many glowing things about this guy. My first job here is to assure everyone he was not perfect. Anyone who put on the black and gold got a pretty healthy dose of them. Try getting it 24/7. I am often asked, what was it like to play for your dad? And it's a question, I could go a lot of routes with it, but the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, so this about sums it up. to make sure his application for sainthood has a blemish or two, let me tell you about University of Virginia Parents Weekend, fall of '84. It's my first year there. My mom tells him, shouldn't we book a room? You know, oh, there's tons of hotels, we'll find something. Now, this is long before Hotels.com. I mean, you actually had to pick up the phone. Ours was rotary. I think we were the last one in the neighborhood to get a touch-tone phone. Call information. So he decided they load up in their Chevy Caprice Classic, drove and got down to Charlottesville and drove for hours in every direction and could not find a place to stay. Ultimately, they ended up sleeping in the car, not that far from my dorm. No, I guarantee you secretly, he was happy about the money he saved. Joyce, I know, was not too happy. So I forget which one of the guys in my dorm asked me, but the conversation went about like this. Hey, Pet, where'd your parents stay? Oh, they stayed in the Caprice. Oh, I've never heard of that. That sounds nice. Where is it? Oh, I'm pretty sure it's right here in Charlottesville. You know, I've heard a lot of people talk about that the coach is someone that you want to emulate. That's not always the case. Here's a pretty good example. Here's a pretty good example of why. That stash, people have referred to it, starts with the letter P. Pizza maker. What were you guys thinking about? So it's 1997. I'm pretty new at my job at North Penn High School. Money is tight and there's car trouble. Something about cars needing oil. My sister Linda comes to the rescue and offers her. She had a Delta 88, was about 8 or 9 years old. It runs well, but it was just one of those cars that caught a bad batch of paint at the factory. You know, blistered on the roof, blistered on the hood. I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, it was a little unsightly, but it was going to get me back and forth to school. Unbeknownst to me, my father decides to take care of the car for me. He goes to Kmart and finds cans of spray paint on sale, 99 cents a can. And there was only one color available, for obvious reasons. It was neon blue. So he lays down drop cloths in the garage, tapes up all the car windows, and proceeds to paint the car. On some of the tough spots where the spray didn't take evenly, he used a roller and a brush. You can't make this up. He used a roller and a brush. He's proud of himself. He brings the car over to the house, and I am mortified. What did you do? The color is hideous. And he bristled up, hey, it's a transportation special. It gets you from A to B. And he goes, and I figured you wouldn't mind the color. It's kind of like that sissy blue color you use at North Penn anyway. So I took it to Mako. I would drive into work while it was dark and drive home when it was dark. I was inventing things to do at work till the sun went down. My embarrassment reached its pinnacle when I was in the main office at North Penn checking my mailbox, grabbing a cup of coffee. I was in the office with Jack McCauley, who's the head of security, who knew all about the Blue Meanie because of my dear friend Dick Beck used to take the security camera and zoom in on it and call me for some other reason into the security office and wait till I noticed that the Blue Meanie was up on the screen. So there was an elderly faculty member in the high school office, a little hard of hearing. He was on the verge of retirement. He sees Jack, who's the security guy. I'm just there, checking my mailbox, and he says, "Jack, there's a student car parked in the faculty parking lot." So Jack, I think, knew exactly what he was talking about. He says, "Oh, really? How do you know it's a student car?" "Because it's hand-painted. And it's filled with trash." So I'm looking for a hole to crawl into. Eventually, we buy our neighbor's wood-paneled Plymouth Voyager. to upgrade from the Blue Meanie, I felt like I was driving a Bentley. The Blue Meanie ends up on the lot at Bergey's Tire for sale. I used to drive by there once a week, to see how long it would take until somebody bought it. So it started out like this. The next week was that. Eventually, no, it's nobody made an offer because the last time I drove by it, and anytime that came up in conversation, he would always grumble. He'd grumble about how ungrateful I was that I didn't appreciate his hard work. But that sums him up. One of his favorite sayings was sweat equity. He loved to do so. He just did not like to pay people for things he felt he could do. Now, it might take that other person 5 minutes to do a job that was going to take him 4 days, but he didn't care. There was that satisfaction of, I did this myself and saved the money. So why pay Mako $99 for the presidential when you could do it for $20 worth of spray paint? He was all about efficiency. Every necktie he ever owned was tied once. Okay? Then he hung it. Then he just loosened it like a noose and hung it in his closet. Now, he didn't care when he came into school and he was wearing a nice tie till you got to about the last 2 or 3 inches of it, and it was all wrinkled up. But he was so proud of that because he goes, think of the time I've saved in my life. If you add up how long it takes to tie a tie, add that up over all my years of putting a tie on. So, like I said, he was all about efficiency. He fixed everything. Mr. Duct Tape. He got an extra 5 years out of our ride mower with 2 rolls of duct tape and a coat hanger. And lucky for me, I didn't inherit that gene. Okay, I have a really nice toolbox, and when you open it up, the first thing in it is a checkbook. My sister Linda visits him in Florida a couple years back, calls me, wait till you see what Dad has done to his bike. She sent a picture, and I'm just bummed. I've looked for it, and I couldn't find it. He wanted a basket on the front, so he took a economy-size red Folgers coffee can and tied it to the front of the bike with wire. Now, this is a guy that's not hurting for money. He tied a red Folgers can to be the bike basket, and then the seat wasn't comfortable enough, so we got an old couch cushion and electrical taped it to the bike seat, and was very proud to drive that. I mean, we all know he didn't care what it looked like. Function over style, baby. And why was he like this? Teach us the value of a dollar. He wasn't saving the money for him. My parents were never lavish spenders. It was for us. Because of the consistency, playing football at CB West during the playing football at West during the Pettine regime, it really results in a shared. It's like the book of West football. So I heard Belly Flopper's already mentioned once. I know, and he's already put me down for a couple bellies for screwing up the psych tape music coming in the beginning. There were guys that had to do duck walk. We were talking about that last night at the New Britain Inn. And when that video clip said every player reaches their crossroads, at some point they all reached a crossroads. Well, mine was as a result of duck walk up at Tower Hill Field during the 1982 preseason when I quit the team and made a real dramatic exit where I was stripping off a piece of equipment every 10 yards as I walked off the field before Walt Kabrinsky finally tackled me and I had to apologize to the team to come back. But cadence drill. He wanted to know why at Cleveland we weren't doing cadence drill with the Browns. So if you're a former player and the team ever had to go back for you in cadence drill, raise your hand. the team ever had to go all the way back from the 5-yard line? Raise your hand. The challenge system, I don't know how long that stuck around. The Apple Club, Dick already mentioned that one. That was one of my dad's favorites. Actually, it was my sister Linda gets credit. She did the artwork for the poster with the pig and the apple. He was very proud of that. The players that played after 1983 can thank me for the end of initiation. Okay, we used to do a gong show, and then the players would get initiated, and it involved everything from everybody getting Vaseline in their hair and eggs thrown at them, and I didn't even worry about putting an act together because I knew that the upperclassmen were so ready to get at me for what my dad had done to them. I knew in the gong show I wasn't going to, why even put an act together? I knew I was going to get gonged with it. I didn't even think I opened my mouth and I got hit with an egg. So unfortunately, or probably fortunately, that tradition ended that year. We've all expanded our vocabulary. We've heard horses, you know what, often. He was a big fan of Spaceman. It was also educational. I think all the players know how big a bird's brain is. For those of you who forget, it's about that big. If your stride length was limited, they were called pee-pee steps. If you were looking at the ground too much, he would tell you stop looking for worms. Bozo was not just a clown. Genius, as we've already heard, that's not a compliment. Mama's boy. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, that was just for me. As we've already witnessed, the book of West Football has some amazing chapters. We were always learning, whether we knew it or not, and it was a great set of life skills. That he was all about his philosophy that carried over into coaching, but really in life. Be firm, be fair, be compassionate. And he had such a unique skill. People say, how did he last for so long and be that successful? And his unique skill was to stay true to his core foundation, demanding attention to detail, great work ethic, but at the same time, he was able to adapt year in and year out. He never tried to force players into a system. Okay, he always had a system flexible enough that it could adapt to a changing pool of talent year after year, or maybe even week to week as injuries occur. I've never seen anyone better at game planning. He used to compare it to building or to creating a custom suit for each week's opponent, and he was the master tailor. I've been fortunate enough to coach with a lot of different coaches at all different levels of football. Some great ones. Rex Ryan would always hit it on the head. Anytime my dad is around, he would go, "Oh, everybody, the real Coach Pettine is in practice." But when you work with someone special, you always try to take what they do well and incorporate it into make it your own. What I realize is the vast majority of my core football beliefs, and I realized this very quickly, my core football beliefs I learned at the dinner table. In retirement, he couldn't stay away from the game. So many of his former players were drawn back to the game as coaches. And when he had a former player that became a coach, he answered the phone on the first ring. He watched countless of hours of NFL film, starting when I was back in Baltimore. He would type up notes, pages and pages of notes, draw schemes, knowing that we weren't going to implement much of it. And he would always preface his comments with, "Well, I'm just a high school coach." But he was almost always spot on. He did struggle with the technology, though. I remember the day he called and said he was having problems logging into his e-pad. I've been quoted. It was in the paper. I was quoted as saying he was invincible, larger than life, and so many of us feel that way about our fathers. And I've realized through all this, through these past 5 weeks, that he's immortal. He will live on in all of us in varying degrees based on our own unique interactions with him. He left his mark on all of us, or you wouldn't be sitting here. And it's the kind of mark that you can't wash off. Family, with his sister Eileen and brother Carmen, my mother Joyce, sisters Linda and Sandy. Great family, but we also knew that we shared him with the community, and we were okay with that. I have more brothers than I can count because of CB West football. You know, all I have to do is just, like last night, just walk through the New Britain Inn. But we all know he wasn't the warm and fuzzy type. He was all about action. He rarely said, "I love you," or that he was proud of us. He would tell other people, and it would eventually make its way back. But we were okay with that because we knew, because he showed us every day. And I can hear his voice in my head. Don't tell me, show me. Talk is cheap. And it really became clear to us that one of the main reasons he retired when he did was because of family. He could have coached for a while longer, but I think he knew the time necessary to run in an elite program came with a price tag. And in his time of retirement, you know, he more than made up for it. My sister Linda was awakened last fall, you know, early in the morning to a sound of hammering. She looks outside, and there's my dad perched on her shed roof, fixing it. Sweat equity, baby. But that was him. Hopefully, most of you got a chance to go into the gymnasium. Wonderful display of awards, trophies that he amassed over the years. And he thought those were an acknowledgement of a job well done. But they weren't really on display at his house. He'd kind of set up an area in the basement and put some of them up on the wall, but most of it was in boxes. Most of the stuff in there had to be wiped off. Like I said, they were either in boxes or really there for the mice to see. And if you asked him, he would say without a doubt, this auditorium is his real trophy room. He wanted to impart all the things that we've all talked about, not just how to be a better football player, but so much more importantly, how to be a better person, better son or daughter, husband or wife, father or mother, brother, sister, how to be a better friend. That was his gift to the world. Thank you. Apologize for the length of this program. Doesn't quite rival the practice, but it's getting there. I'd like to call Russ Durbin back up to the stage for the benediction, and then it will be followed by a slideshow to seniors' favorite song.
We come to the end of this tribute, to this celebration, and we now call upon Almighty God, asking you for your blessing and for the peace that passes all of our human understanding, to be with each and every one of us today, tonight, and as we go forward throughout our lives. Amen.